Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are stepping right into the shadowy Gothic workshop of a master magician, all courtesy of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's classic poem, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now, it's a story you probably think you already know, right? But we're actually going to break down the core mechanics of this tale to reveal exactly why it has survived for centuries. You see, this isn't just some fun fantasy story. It is a profoundly brilliant cautionary tale about the very real dangers of wielding power without wisdom. So let's get right into it. The whole thing really boils down to this one brilliantly simple premise. What actually happens when you wield power you don't fully understand? Goethe's entire narrative is built right around this question, and it acts as this timeless cautionary tale. It totally exposes that incredibly alluring trap of taking dangerous shortcuts. I mean, think about it. When we see a faster, easier way to get things done, the temptation to use tools or powers we haven't quite mastered is just immense. Keep this question in the back of your mind as we trace the footsteps of our protagonist.
All right, so we can basically break this story down into three distinct acts. Let's start with Act 1, the temptation.
Picture this. Our ambitious young apprentice is left completely alone in his master's workshop, and his brain starts working through this horribly flawed sequence of logic. Step 1, he desperately wants to avoid menial labor. He's been tasked with drawing his master's bath by hand, which basically means lugging these super heavy buckets of water up from the river. No thanks, right? So step 2, he decides to just command the elements. Eager to prove his own magical capabilities, and frankly, just to get out of doing the hard work, he takes a shortcut. Which brings us to step 3. He casts a spell on an old broomstick, bringing it to life, and orders it to fetch the river water for him. In his head, the logic seems totally sound. Just use magic to solve a physical problem. What could go wrong? Well, that brings us to Act 2, the escalation. Because the spell actually works, and it results in some relentless efficiency. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the sheer mounting horror of it all. The apprentice watches the trough fill right up to the top, decides, okay, job's done, and goes to stop the broom. And then it hits him. He has completely forgotten the check word. That's the specific, absolutely essential incantation required to actually undo the spell and stop the magic. He knows exactly how to turn the power on, but he has literally no idea how to turn it off. Which leads to this absolutely terrifying timeline. You have to remember, the broom doesn't have human reasoning. It has no off switch. It just executes its one command. 5 minutes in, the trough is filled to the brim. 15 minutes, the entire garden is completely flooded. 30 minutes, the cellar is totally submerged. After just an hour, the whole house is drowning in this unending deluge. The servant object has essentially become this unstoppable machine, just executing its command over and over, completely indifferent to the massive watery disaster it's creating around our panicked apprentice. And just like that, we hit Act 3, the reckoning.
Desperate, terrified, and out of options, the apprentice resorts to crude physical force. His intended solution? Grab an axe and violently split the enchanted broomstick right in two. But check out the actual result. Each fragmented splinter instantly transforms into a brand new, fully functional water carrier. It's wild. Trying to forcefully fix a problem born out of ignorance doesn't solve a thing. It literally multiplies the chaos exponentially. So now, instead of just one broom relentlessly fetching water, he's got a small army of broomsticks scurrying back and forth with buckets, guaranteeing total ruin.
But then, right as the apprentice is about to be completely overwhelmed by the flood, the master walks in, and with one simple command, he silences the spirits and instantly restores order to the house. The master doesn't panic. He doesn't need an axe. With just a few very specific words, he turns the brooms back into plain old inanimate wood and ends the chaos in a second. It just goes to show that true power doesn't lie in taking action or casting the spell. It lies in the complete, foundational mastery of the forces you are actually dealing with. Okay, let's dive into this next section, moving past the narrative and into the thematic core, the perils of unmastered magic. So if we distill Goethe's core themes straight out of the text, we get 3 big takeaways. First up, youthful arrogance. Our apprentice foolishly assumed that just watching the master was the exact same thing as actually being the master. Second, the alluring trap of shortcuts. He wanted the reward, the drawn bath and the avoided labor, without putting in any of the necessary work. And third, a severe lack of foresight. He initiated this massive process without giving a single thought as to how he'd conclude it. Goethe uses all of this to show us the profound disorder that pops up whenever someone tries to control forces way beyond their own experience. I absolutely love how this quote captures the whole essence of the problem. It describes the story as a scenario where a servant object takes on a life of its own through a mismanaged spell. And think about how incredibly relevant that is to us right now. This isn't just about some old wooden brooms and river water. It's a vivid, almost graphic novel-style warning about creating or using tools that have the capacity to operate totally autonomously if we mismanage them. It's about the terrifying reality of activating any complex system without possessing the actual wisdom to govern it.
Which brings us to a final, really provocative question I want you to take away from this explainer. In your own life, what unstoppable forces are you trying to command without knowing the check word? Whether it's in your career, the way you use new technology, or just the everyday shortcuts you take to avoid doing the heavy lifting, are you absolutely sure you know how to stop the process once you start it? Because the Sorcerer's Apprentice proves that action without mastery isn't power at all, it's just the beginning of a flood. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating text, and remember, keep seeking true mastery.